Follow the core of discovery with explorer guides for historic locations across the state. Available at opv.org/Lewis and Clark.
Funding for local broadcast of the NewsHour with Jim Lehrer has been provided by viewers like you and by the following.
KOPB's business programs are made possible in part by D.A. Davidson and Company, serving generations of investors and families since 1935.
The Oregon Forest Resources Institute, encouraging you to rediscover Oregon's forests. See for yourself how forest practices are changing.
Good evening. I'm Margaret Warner. Jim Lehrer is off. On the NewsHour tonight, the news of this Thursday. Then we devote the bulk of tonight's program to the death of Iraqi terrorist leader Abu Musab al-Zarqawi. A report on how it happened, with reaction from Washington and around the world. How it's playing in Baghdad, as reported by Trudy Rubin of the Philadelphia Inquirer. Analysis of Zarqawi's impact and what his death may mean. And we close with the last piece in Paul Selman's science series on the economics of global warming.
Major funding for the NewsHour with Jim Lehrer has been provided by...
You've worked hard over the years creating a good life for yourself and for your family. At Pacific Life, we understand the importance of building a legacy that will stand the test of time. For over 135 years, Pacific Life has provided millions of Americans with the power of choice, a wide array of solutions to help them meet their financial and estate planning goals. Pacific Life, the power to help you succeed.
At CIT, we provide the financing to keep healthcare strong and healthy. We help energy companies find new resources. We work with communications companies to make the world smaller and life bigger. We offer financial aid to make college possible for more students. At CIT, we help finance the future because that's the place to be. See it with CIT.
And by the Archer Daniels Midland Company, Toyota, and the Atlantic Philanthropies, and...
This program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Abu Musab al-Zarqawi is dead, killed by a U.S. airstrike. It happened last night in a village near Bakuba, some 30 miles outside Baghdad. 5 other people died in the strike. Zarqawi was the most visible face of the Iraqi insurgency and the most wanted terrorist in the country. Iraqi Prime Minister al-Maliki made the announcement in Baghdad. In Washington, President Bush hailed the death of the leader of al-Qaeda in Iraq.
Now Zarqawi has met his end. And this violent man will never murder again. Zarqawi's death is a severe blow to al-Qaeda. It's a victory in the global war on terror. And it is an opportunity for Iraq's new government to turn the tide of this struggle.
British Prime Minister Blair called it a blow against al-Qaeda everywhere. Al-Qaeda in Iraq issued an internet statement calling Zarqawi a martyr and vowing to continue waging holy war. We'll have full coverage of this right after the news summary. There was also a key political development in Iraq. Prime Minister al-Maliki named new ministers of defense, interior, and national security today. 2 are Shiites and 1 is a Sunni Arab. The Iraqi parliament approved his choices, breaking a 3-week deadlock between Sunnis and Shiites. The 3 men were later sworn into office. They will be responsible for the Iraqi military, police, and prisons. The 2 developments did not immediately dampen the ongoing violence in Iraq. At least 5 explosions, mostly car bombs, killed some 40 people around Baghdad. The deadliest 2 exploded at markets near each other. The president of Iran announced today he's ready for nuclear talks, but also said Iran wouldn't give up its nuclear rights. President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad said Iran was ready for dialogue on mutual concerns with other nations if they took place free from threats. The U.S. has offered to join the Europeans' talks with Iran, but only if Tehran agrees to freeze its uranium enrichment program first. The U.S. Senate today rejected a Republican effort to cut taxes permanently on inherited estates. The 57-41 vote fell 3 short of the number needed to advance the bill over a Democratic filibuster. Most Republicans who called for permanent repeal labeled the tax unfair, but most Democrats said repealing it would only benefit the wealthiest Americans.
The American heritage is one of savings and frugality and the belief in the right to own private property and leave that property to whoever they choose on their death. And that's why overwhelmingly people who are not impacted by the death tax believe it's wrong and say in poll after poll it should be eliminated.
Oh, I know some don't want to lose anything. They want to take it all with them, but you can't take it all with you. And the question is, should at least some of the largesse that those who've been most successful in this country have accumulated in their lifetime, should at least some of it bear a tax? Because most of it represents accumulation of assets that have never, ever borne a tax.
The estate tax is currently being phased out under the 2001 tax cut law. It's scheduled to be repealed entirely for 1 year in 2010, but revived a year later. Majority Leader Bill Frist vowed to schedule another vote on repeal later this year. The first vaccine to prevent cervical cancer was approved by the Food and Drug Administration today. The drug, Gardasil, is for use in girls and women ages 9 to 26. It protects them against the virus that causes 70% of cervical cancer cases. The virus is sexually transmitted. Cervical cancer kills 250,000 women worldwide and nearly 4,000 women in the U.S. each year. On Wall Street today, the Dow Jones Industrial Average gained nearly 8 points to close above 10,938. The NASDAQ fell 6 points to close at 2145. And that's it for the news summary tonight. Now, the death of Zarqawi, how it happened, the reaction in Baghdad, the impact of his death, and global warming. The targeting and killing of Abu Musab al-Zarqawi and Teres Suarez.
The American military says the most wanted man in Iraq, Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, met his end when the U.S. Air Force dropped 2 500-pound bombs on his safe house in a rural village near Baquba, north of Baghdad, this morning. Iraq's new Prime Minister, Nouri al-Maliki, was the first to deliver the news publicly of Zarqawi's death from the Iraqi capital this morning.
Today we have managed to exterminate Zarqawi. What happened today is a result of cooperation that we have been asking from our masses and from our citizens and the sons of our country that have been cooperating with us by providing us with information and to have facilitated the task of the Iraqi forces and multinational forces by striking a final blow.
Maliki was flanked by the U.S. Ambassador, Zalmay Khalilzad, and the U.S. Commander in Iraq, General George Casey.
This happened in an airstrike that was conducted against an identified, isolated safe house. Tips and intelligence from Iraqi senior leaders from his network led our forces to Zarqawi and some of his associates who were conducting a meeting approximately 8 kilometers north of Baquba when the airstrike was launched. What I will tell you, and this will be fleshed out for you this afternoon, all of these operations are the result of a long, painstaking process where tips and intelligence are received, processed, checked out. This process in itself has been, this particular one has been going on for a couple of weeks. And it led us to this house and to this meeting.
At a later news conference, U.S. military spokesman Major General William Caldwell provided more specifics about the raid.
As you know, coalition forces killed Zarqawi and one of his top lieutenants, Sheikh al-Rahman, yesterday on June 7th at 6:15 p.m. in an airstrike against an identified, isolated safe house. As you observe the target here, there was a flight of 2 F-16s from the United States Air Force. They have now been told where the target is. They have identified it. The aircraft is going to engage us here momentarily with a 500-pound bomb. on the target. The decision has been made now by the commander, the pilot in charge up there, that they are going to do a reattack, and you'll see the second 500-pound bomb go in shortly. Following this strike, Iraqi security forces, and specifically Iraqi police, responded to that location. They were the first ones to arrive on the scene. That was followed very shortly thereafter by elements of the multinational force north, specifically troopers from the 4th Infantry Division, which were part of the 101st Airborne Air Assault Division up there. They then moved to the location, swept through the site, and identified 6 persons that had been killed in that strike at that time.
Caldwell said Zarqawi's body was brought to a secure location where it was positively identified.
They went ahead and brought him back, did further examination of his body, found more scars and tattoos consistent with what had been reported and what we knew about him. They then did fingerprint identification, and that came back at about 03:30 this morning as positively identified as Zarqawi having been killed.
There was no firefight.
It was an Air Force strike that eliminated that target, and there was no further direct fire engagement at that point. We knew exactly who was there. We knew it was Zarqawi, and that was the deliberate target that we went to get. We also knew from having watched the movements of al-Rahman that he was there too, in that house. The information that we were able to gather over the last 24 hours is currently being used and exploited. It will influence future operations, so it'd be kind of inappropriate at this point to talk about future ops for operational reasons.
General Caldwell said a woman and child were among at least 6 people killed in the attack. The Jordanian government said today it assisted in tracking Zarqawi, a Jordanian native.
There was a security cooperation between all sides in chasing al-Zarqawi, especially the Jordanian security agencies, to find the location where al-Zarqawi might have been with his assistant. There were many attempts to find these locations, to capture him or attack these locations.
President Bush spoke from the White House Rose Garden this morning, and while he praised the operation, he warned that the battle against insurgents in Iraq was far from over.
Iraqis can be justly proud of their new government and its early steps to improve their security. And Americans can be enormously proud of the men and women of our armed forces who worked tirelessly with their Iraqi counterparts to track down this brutal terrorist and to put him out of business. The operation against Zarqawi was conducted with courage and professionalism by the finest military in the world. Coalition and Iraqi forces persevered through years of near misses and false leads. And they never gave up. Last night, their persistence and determination were rewarded. On behalf of all Americans, I congratulate our troops on this remarkable achievement. Zarqawi is dead, but the difficult and necessary mission in Iraq continues. We can expect the terrorists and insurgents to carry on without him. We can expect the sectarian violence to continue. Yet the ideology of terror has lost one of its most visible and aggressive leaders. We have tough days ahead of us in Iraq that will require the continued patience of the American people. Yet the developments of the last 24 hours give us renewed confidence in the final outcome of this struggle, the defeat of terrorism threats, and a more peaceful world for our children and grandchildren. May God bless the Iraqi people, and may God continue to bless America.
Several world leaders joined the condemnation of Zarqawi, including British Prime Minister Tony Blair, whose country has 7,000 troops in Iraq.
Every day we hear of the death toll through the fomenting of civil strife, a campaign of murder and kidnapping and brutality, all of it designed to stifle Iraqi democracy at birth. And al-Zarqawi was its most vicious prosecutor. The death of al-Zarqawi is a strike against al-Qaeda in Iraq, and therefore a strike against al-Qaeda everywhere. But we should have no illusions. We know that they will continue to kill. We know there are many, many obstacles to overcome. But they also know that our determination to defeat them is total.
And at the United Nations in New York, Kofi Annan said the Iraqi people would welcome Zarqawi's death.
This is an individual who has been responsible for many heinous crimes, caused lots of problems in Iraq for the government and the people of Iraq. The people of Iraq who are afraid to step out. People of Iraq who are only demanding peace, stability, and to have their streets back. I think they will all be relieved that he is gone. And of course, we cannot pretend that that will mean the end of the violence. But it is a relief that such a heinous and dangerous man who has caused so much harm to the Iraqis is no longer around to continue his work.
In Baghdad, there were celebrations in the streets, and at the attack site, Iraqis surveying the heaps of rubble expressed disbelief that Zarqawi had been living among them.
Today at about 5:45, this house you are seeing, a family was living in it, and it was filled with children and old men and women. There's no Abu Musab or anybody else. They closed the area, they didn't let anyone in, and they laid explosives. Then they blew up the house.
We don't know. They rented the house. The story is that they came from another place because they'd been displaced, and they came to live here.
Al-Qaeda in Iraq confirmed the death of its leader in a statement posted on the internet. The statement hailed Zarqawi as a martyr and vowed to continue the holy war. In the hours after Zarqawi's death was announced, a series of car bombs rocked Baghdad, killing dozens of people. For more on the Baghdad chronology and reaction, we go to Trudy Rubin, a columnist for the Philadelphia Inquirer who joined us from the Iraqi capital. I talked with her earlier this evening by phone. Trudy, was there any sign tonight in Baghdad that one of the leaders of the insurgency had been killed?
There were a lot of celebrations. People were honking cars in the streets. In the Shiite slums, huge, 2 million people. People were firing up in the air in celebration. Sheep were being slaughtered and meat given to the poor, and everybody was calling everybody else and congratulating them, especially in the Shiite community, which has suffered tremendously at Zarqawi's hands because he specifically said that people should kill Shiites and tried to stir up sectarian war against them.
When did word start to get out this morning that Abu Musab al-Zarqawi may have been killed?
It was early morning. I was actually sitting in a general's office, and I got a call on my cell phone. And then word started circulating, and people started coming into his office. And then the news came over that Casey had confirmed it. And then when I called around, it took a while for people to be sure. Those who had computers knew that ABC News and other networks were starting to mention it. And then the Prime Minister confirmed it. And then I started getting calls from Iraqis.
Trudy, you were at the briefing this morning where the military laid out the operation that got Zarqawi. How did they present it?
Well, it showed an interesting video. A 500-pound bomb was dropped. A huge cloud of smoke went up. Then the U.S. F-16s went over again and dropped it again. It made one wonder how there was anything but mincemeat left of Zarqawi. But then they showed the pictures, and it was clearly he, but they also said they had wiped a lot of blood and debris off the body.
Were they able to describe in any detail the intelligence that led them to that structure?
They said that it was a long process. They had started with mid-level Zarqawi followers, and they worked their way up. The most interesting thing is that they got intelligence from within his organization, but they also managed to track him through a key advisor, Sheikh Abdul Rahman, a spiritual advisor, whose name they were given by an informant, and they tracked Abdul Rahman and managed to figure out that he was meeting with Zarqawi, and that was the key to their knowing where Zarqawi was and dropping the bomb.
Did they realize he was there, or was the primary target the spiritual advisor?
No, they knew that he was there. They were categorical about that, and they said that this particular evening was
cause.
For all you've said about the significance of this killing, were your sources still being cautious when asked to assess what effect this might have going forward?
Oh, absolutely. I think even General Casey and the military spokesman who gave the briefing today were warning against getting carried away and warning that this won't mean the end of all violence. And we've had episodes before when Saddam was captured, when other leading terrorists were killed. So one does have to be very cautious. But I've now spent almost 2 weeks here, and this is my 7th visit since Baghdad fell, and I've never seen such despair. People really were hopeless. That was the word that kept being used to me. We are hopeless. There is no hope. And so I think that it's significant that people will get a psychological boost here, and it provides a little opening for the Americans and the new Iraqi government to show whether they're capable of doing anything to improve the security, especially in Baghdad.
And on a day when the final 3 cabinet positions were announced, including the 2 cabinet ministers that run both the police and the armed forces, was it a significant day for getting a target of this size?
It is very significant because the government hasn't been completed for 5 months, and these last 2 posts are very important. Defense more or less controls the army. The Iraqi army, really, it's the Americans. And Interior controls the police. But because those posts were vacant, it really was very difficult for the U.S. to start any new initiative in Baghdad. Now that those posts are filled, Iraq's foreign minister told me today, Hasha Zabari, that there probably would be an offensive coming up very shortly in Baghdad to try to clean out some of these neighborhoods where chaos has taken over in the last 5 months, even worse than before. So the combination of Zarqawi's death and the appointment of these ministers, again, gives this little window, which has to be followed up. I mean, someone has to go through that window, where the Americans and Iraqi forces, if they can achieve something in the current weeks, they can build on this momentum.
Trudy Rubin joining us from Baghdad. Thanks a lot.
You're very welcome.
Now a terrorist and his legacy, and to correspondent Kwame Holman.
The truck bomb was massive, destroying the United Nations headquarters in Baghdad and killing its top diplomat along with 21 others. That attack in August 2003 marked the beginning of a full-throated insurgency in Iraq against the U.S. and coalition occupation. At the time, few people knew the mastermind of the attack, but within a month, the name of Abu Musab al-Zarqawi became a very familiar one.
Al-Zarqawi, al-Qaeda operative.
Today, the death of the leader of al-Qaeda in Iraq was heralded by Mr. Bush and his top officials as a victory in the war on terror.
Zarqawi was the operational commander of the terrorist movement in Iraq. He led a campaign of car bombings, assassinations, and suicide attacks that has taken the lives of many American forces and thousands of innocent Iraqis. Osama bin Laden called this Jordanian terrorist the Prince of al-Qaeda in Iraq. He called on the terrorists around the world to listen to him and obey him.
Over the last several years, no single person on this planet has had the blood of more innocent men, women, and children on his hands than Zarqawi. He personified the dark, sadistic, and medieval vision of the future of beheadings, suicide bombings, and indiscriminate killings. A behavior pattern that has been rejected by the overwhelming majority of the Iraqi people, whether Sunni, Shias, or Kurds, and certainly by the overwhelming majority of Muslims worldwide.
The Jordanian militant has been blamed for numerous violent incidents since the UN attack. Their dramatic effect dominated much of the news coming out of Iraq and was considered a key element in the escalation of violence between Sunni and Shia Arabs, such as this attack last January on a police station in the Shiite city of Karbala. At least 130 Iraqis were killed. The blast came just weeks after Iraq's parliamentary election. A Sunni Arab, Zarqawi often took aim at Iraqi Shiites.
and he declared an all-out war against the renegade Shiites all over Iraq, wherever they are. You started the aggression. Beware of our anger. We swear by God that we will never show mercy to you.
That audio tape surfaced before an attack on one of the most revered mosques of Shiite Islam in Samarra in February. Although no one was killed in the blast, it sparked weeks of sectarian strife that would result in many Iraqi deaths. Sometimes Zarqawi's targeting was particularly gruesome. In 2004, insurgents detonated car bombs at a community celebration in Baghdad while U.S. soldiers handed out candy. 36 children were killed, many more wounded. The international leadership of al-Qaeda, to whom Zarqawi pledged allegiance in 2004, has at times disputed his tactics. A letter from Ayman al-Zawahiri, al-Qaeda's number 2 worldwide, said Muslim civilians should not be targeted in Iraq. The authenticity of the letter, posted on a U.S. intelligence website, was disputed by al-Qaeda. 2 of Zarqawi's highest-profile attacks took place in his home country of Jordan. The triple suicide bombings against hotels in Amman last November that killed 60, and the 2002 assassination of U.S. diplomat Lawrence Foley. Zarqawi also orchestrated the videotaped beheadings of several Western hostages, including British contractor Kenneth Bigley and American businessman Nicholas Berg. A masked Zarqawi purportedly decapitated Berg himself. Zarqawi also posted videos online to expand his reach and recruit troops to join his cause. U.S. intelligence officials have said Zarqawi's network now spans as many as 40 other countries. In July of 2004, the U.S. more than doubled the bounty on his head to $25 million. U.S. forces were, until now, unable to apprehend him, but had captured or killed nearly 100 of his deputies.
Now, to assess Zarqawi, his impact, and where his death leaves the insurgency, we turn to Rend al-Rahim Franki, the former Iraqi ambassador to the U.S. under the first interim government. She's now executive director of the Iraq Foundation, which promotes democracy in Iraq. Eric Davis, professor of political science at Rutgers University's Center for Middle Eastern Studies. Mohammed Hafez, a visiting professor at the University of Missouri in Kansas City. He's completing a book about suicide bombers in Iraq. And Bruce Hoffman, chief of counterterrorism and counterinsurgency at the RAND Corporation and a former advisor to the U.S.-led Coalition Provisional Authority in Iraq in 2004. Welcome to you all. Ambassador Franki, beginning with you, how significant a development is this to have Zarqawi gone from the scene?
I understand that one doesn't want to blow this up out of proportion, but I think it is very significant. Zarqawi embodied terrorism in Iraq. He was the emblem of terrorism, and his very name caused fear in the Iraqi public. The other thing is that Zarqawi had established his credibility over the past 3 years. From the bombing of the UN headquarters in August 2003, he has built up his reputation as a first-class operative, so his credibility was high, he was charismatic, he attracted recruits, he attracted money, and he was a cornerstone of that component of the insurgency that is associated with the fanatical jihadist movement. His removal removes a major pillar in the violence, the cycle of violence in Iraq. I think it's very important. It will not end the violence, but it is a strong blow.
Professor Hafez, how do you see it? A strong blow against the insurgency?
Well, this is a case of deja vu all over again. These sort of euphoric claims were made after Saddam was captured, after his 2 sons were killed, and after the assault on Fallujah in November 2004. Yet none of this really broke the back of the insurgency. As a matter of fact, we've seen the insurgency grow and develop at its own pace. So I suspect that the killing of Zarqawi, while it's important and certainly something to be celebrated, in and of itself will not end the insurgency and will not even necessarily end al-Qaeda in Iraq. What Zarqawi has done is set up various brigades and networked with various other Iraqi brigades. He has put a lot of Iraqis in positions of leadership in his organization, and by doing so, he's really tried to institutionalize it, if you will, within the Iraqi insurgency.
How do you see it, Professor Davis, in terms of how significant it is that he is now gone from the scene?
Well, I agree with my colleagues that we shouldn't over-exaggerate Zarqawi's death. Nevertheless, I think there are 4 reasons that we should see this as a very positive development. First, al-Zarqawi was the intellectual and tactical military mastermind of the insurgency. He was responsible for all sorts of innovative and effective techniques such as televised beheadings, the use of the internet, car bombings, and many other things that we could cite. These skills have now been taken away from the insurgency. Secondly, it enhances the credibility of the American military and the Iraqi army as well. Let's remember that many Iraqis were saying, it's been 3 years now since Saddam was overthrown. How is it possible that al-Zarqawi, a former prisoner, a person with little education, a person with very little resources, is still at large and able to flaunt the most powerful military machine in the world, namely the United States Army? He will no longer be issuing videotapes, internet statements flaunting the inability of the United States to capture him. Third, I think this is a very powerful psychological shot in the arm to the Iraqi silent majority. Most Iraqis are against sectarianism. They want peace and security, and they'd like to sign on to the democratic project that's being pursued by the Iraqi government, and which, as we all know, is at the core of U.S. foreign policy in Iraq. However, they know that there was looting after the fall of Saddam. They know that there's been a deteriorating economic and security situation, no electricity, we can go on and on. And I think by having done away with Zarqawi, at least the Iraqis now are going to feel a little more trust in their government, a little more trust in the democracy project, and more willing to sign on to that.
Could I ask you to hold your fourth
finally,
point, Professor? Let me ask you to hold
Sure.
your fourth point, and let me go to Bruce Hoffman, and we'll get back to you. Bruce Hoffman, how do you see this? Did he set up a network and put in place techniques that now will outlive him? Or do you think that in an organization like this, leadership is actually key, and that without him, this, at least the part of the insurgency that he was running, really will suffer a blow?
I think beyond any doubt he was an enormously charismatic and inspirational figure to jihadis. I believe that he banked on the fact that in death his message of violence, intolerance, hatred, terrorism would have as greater resonance as it has in life. And the reason I say that is Zarqawi was always the type of commander that led from the front. He wasn't off somewhere in a cave mouthing platitudes. He was a fighter, and he died with a gun in his hands, in essence. We had so many close calls over the past few months in nearly getting him. He himself had to believe that at one time his luck would run out. And I believe in that respect he's put in place, if not a named successor, at least a process of succession that will allow what he began to continue, and also that his message, he will emerge as a martyr, as an icon, inspiring
Which
imitation
they called him
and succession.
today.
Absolutely.
Ms. Franke, the sectarianism in particular, he was always railing against Shiites. To what degree do you think he sparked, with not just with the Samarra bombing, but with this whole M.O., this Sunni versus Shiite, Shiite versus Sunni violence that now seems to have engulfed at least parts of Iraq?
He was not the cause of Sunni violence or Shia Sunni violence, but he tapped into a raw nerve and exploited that in a merciless way. There is no doubt that Zarqawi was responsible for the killing of Shia and for instigating the killing and the assassination of Shia, whether through suicide bombings or capturing people off buses and killing them. I believe that he was also responsible for the killing of many Sunnis in order to foment violence. We know he took responsibility for the killing of Sunni sheikhs from Anbar province. He believed that the tools justified the means, or the means justified the ends rather, and the end was to foment Sunni-Shia warfare.
So, Professor Hafez, if the Sunni-Shia violence is, in fact, what's really roiling Iraq most painfully now, to what degree, one, do you agree that Zarqawi really helped trigger that, or at least tap into the raw nerve and get it going? And then do you think this will outlive him, or do you think there's a possibility of stopping that cycle without him constantly egging it on?
In many respects, I think Zarqawi died a happy man. The two strategies that he was pursuing, he will live on beyond him precisely because of the effectiveness of his initial tactics. The first strategy was fomenting sectarian civil war, and this is, without a doubt, has been going on. We've been finding heads in banana boxes. People are being taken off buses and shot just simply for being Shia. And certainly we've seen the death squads that are taking place, arresting people at night and shooting them in the head. So that's one. The other thing that Zarqawi emphasized early on in the insurgency was that you need to target the Iraqi security forces, the police, the army, and what have you, largely because he saw them as being the basis for stability in Iraq and the basis for the new Iraqi regime. Today, most insurgent groups, not ones connected to Zarqawi, have claimed responsibilities and continue to claim responsibility for attacks on Iraqi security forces. So in this respect, Zarqawi's strategy has been institutionalized within the insurgency.
So in other words, you think it is really now has a total momentum and life of its own?
Absolutely. And one thing we need to keep in mind is Zarqawi has really set up brigades that are intended for instance, targeting the Shia and the Better Corps. So this is the Omar brigades that he has set up. He's set up brigades for martyrdom operations, and there are Iraqi leaders for these things. So more than just the idea and the strategy, he's really set up the groups to be able to go out and continue this kind of violence. And I don't see these groups just simply backing up or packing their bags and deciding to leave. I think they will continue.
Professor Davis, you weigh in on this, please, and by all means give us your fourth point, which I interrupted you on.
Well, my fourth point was simply to point out that I think it will be easier for some moderate insurgent groups to engage in back-channel negotiations now that they don't have to be worried about being attacked from their extreme flank, namely by Zarqawi. But I would also point out that, again, trying to look at some positive developments that have happened recently, which I think obviate to a certain extent the kind of emphasis that everyone has been placing on Sunni-Shia sectarian differences, there have been large tribal groupings in both Anbar province and in the so-called Triangle of Death south of Baghdad, both Shia and Sunni tribes, that have mobilized to try to put an end to al-Qaeda and to a lot of the insurgent activities, because a lot of this insurgent activities has also become a front for criminal activity, and this has certainly hampered the tribes. It has undermined their economic position. It has also undermined the ability of tribal leaders to try to develop local governmental organizations, because they've been accused by al-Zarqawi of participating in the apostate behavior of democracy, which the U.S. is trying to supposedly foster on or foist on Iraq.
Gustavo, let me ask you about another point that both President Bush and Prime Minister Blair made today. They both called this a blow to al-Qaeda, period, or al-Qaeda worldwide. One, how significant a factor was he really in al-Qaeda worldwide, and do you think his death represents a blow?
I think it's a blow in terms of the enormous psychological and morale boost that it gives to the war on terrorism and tracking down and eliminating one of really the public enemy number one, or at least in that pantheon of enemies. But I think actually, ironically, probably the two other people that are the most delighted about this next to President Bush and Prime Minister Maliki are doubtlessly Bin Laden and Zawahiri themselves, because Zarqawi was as much a tool for them, but also a rival and a competitor. Now that he's eliminated, they can certainly bask in the sun and the glow themselves of all the publicity, but also they can use Zarqawi as a martyr, as an icon to inspire further acts of martyrdom.
But now he had aspirations throughout the region. He was responsible, or believed to be responsible for that bombing in Jordan. To what degree, I mean, did he have an operative network, and to what degree does that, does this hobble that?
Well, he certainly did have an operative network that stretched across the Middle East, North Africa, and indeed Europe as well. I think that's the big question. I suspect that Zarqawi's organization in Iraq itself will continue to function, as everybody has said. The real issue is whether this far-flung network of logistical supporters, of financiers, of recruiters, will be able to remain coherent, whether with Zarqawi's death, the elimination of their figurehead, of their leader, their mentor in essence, whether they will still be able to hold together and sustain and support Zarqawi's organization in Iraq. That I'm doubtful about that, actually.
And you mentioned that he was very effective in raising money, investors. Frankly, why and how? And will that dry up, do you think?
Well, we don't know whether it'll dry up. But the important thing is that it has taken Zarqawi 3 years to build up his credibility as a mastermind and operational leader in Iraq. And the more you prove yourself, the more you attract recruits, the more you attract funds. Now, he may have a process for succession, but we don't know who the successor is. It will take that successor time to establish himself inside Iraq and in the region where the money's coming from, to establish himself to recruit from outside Iraq and within Iraq. And so whoever it is that comes is going to need a period of time. The question is, in that period of time, we know that a lot of information has been gathered from the bombing site where Zarqawi has been, was killed, and the American generals have called it a treasure trove of information. In that time that it will take for this new leadership to establish itself, are we going to be able to exploit that information and to mine it in order to undermine those networks that all the people are talking about now? Can we race against them in order to stop them before they get an edge? And that is going to be a big challenge, but it's also going to test the credibility of the coalition forces and the new Iraqi government, and that's going to be something to really watch over the next few weeks and months.
Professor Hafiz, I know this is in the realm of speculation, but what are your thoughts on how quickly it would take his network, which I gather is now mostly Iraqi, actually, not foreign fighters anymore? One, is that correct? To resume its operations in a serious way, to reorganize?
Well, with regards to whether his organization is mainly Iraqi or foreign jihadis, the leadership of his organization has increasingly become Iraqified, if you will. But still, he relies tremendously on foreign jihadis, particularly with regards to the suicide bombers. Overwhelmingly, they come from outside of Iraq, and many of them come from Saudi Arabia. But nonetheless, operationally, I think Zarqawi is more than just simply a network of individuals. It's really a network of brigades. And what we've seen with the Mujahideen Consultative Council that was created earlier this year, in January of this year, and Al-Qaeda was part of it, it consisted of various groups. And later on, other groups have joined us. And these are Iraqi groups that are not just individual terrorists that are operating a cell of 1 or 2 people, but really they run a brigades of maybe within a certain tribe or within a certain region, and so they could range from few individuals to tens of individuals. So in this respect, I think these individuals now are going to be looking for a person to pledge allegiance to, just as they have in the past pledged allegiance to Zarqawi. And to the extent that a leader can step forward from inside the organization with credibility to say that I will continue on with the legacy of Zarqawi, I think in that respect they might feel comfortable with going with that new individual. And I suspect that new individual would come from one of the martyrs brigades, either the I believe Abu Abdurrahman al-Iraqi, or it could be Abu Dujana al-Ansari.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there. Professors Hafiz and Davis, Bruce Hoffman, and Ambassador Frankie, thank you. Finally tonight, the last in our science series on global warming. Our economics correspondent, Paul Salmon, has the story.
Global warming. Almost all climatologists agree it's a clear and future danger. Wallace Broecker, a geochemist at Columbia University, has been blaming his fellow humans for over 30 years.
The way we're going now, we're not being responsible. We're saying we want energy as cheap as we can get it. Damn the future.
Meanwhile, says Broecker, the world's population is heading toward 9 billion. If current trends continue, carbon in the atmosphere may triple by the end of the century.
And triple is something like a 6 degree centigrade warming. We would certainly melt the Greenland ice cap and probably release the West Antarctic ice sheet, which together would raise sea level about 36 feet.
36 feet?
Yeah. So that would mean all coastal property throughout the whole world would be destroyed unless you diked it off.
Now, Wally Broecker could be wrong, but given the costs if he's right, let's suspend skepticism for the next 10 minutes or so and consider the origin of the greenhouse gases that may be warming the globe and what we might do about them. First, where do the gases come from? Mainly, it turns out, from the carbon stored up in plants long, long ago. You may or may not remember from high school biology that plants are fueled by photosynthesis, combining water and carbon dioxide with the help of sunlight.
It's a mixture of coal from Wyoming.
So says Professor Bob Eldy at the University of Minnesota's power plant.
The carbon that was captured by photosynthesis and is included in the coal was carbon that was in the atmosphere 100, 200 million years ago.
So this is former plant.
Plant material, that's right.
Compressed over the eons, fossilized into coal or oil. That's the simple chemistry behind global warming. There's no more carbon on Earth than ever before. It's just that much of the carbon absorbed by plants over those eons was easy for humans to dig up and burn above ground to produce energy. Unfortunately, the burning of carbon, C, combines it with oxygen, O, which results in, yes, CO2, the greenhouse gas carbon dioxide. So, the carbon that it took nature millions of years to bury is resurfacing a lot faster. The university is mixing waste wood chips with its coal in order to, in some small way, slow the process down.
So the carbon that is released to the atmosphere after burning this wood is carbon that is recent, and we say it's carbon neutral in terms as a fuel, because that is carbon that can again be sequestered with a new growing tree, and the cycle goes on and on.
Better still would be to mix in or replace the coal with waste biomass that's closer to home, and thus takes less fuel to get here. Oat hulls, for example, from the local cereal mill.
So that is 25% wood, 75% coal, and
right here in this little patch, 1% oat hulls.
The point is, the oats these came from can be readily replanted to reabsorb the carbon emitted into the atmosphere when these are burned. And that's the beauty of biofuels. They're made from current crops, not the flora of yesteryear. Which brings us to what you might call little critter technology.
This is a petri dish that contains bacteria that are making directly from simple plant sugars petroleum.
Are they doing it as we're talking here?
They are. You can see this little scum on the top is actually
it looks like oil.
It's an oil slick. It's an oil slick that is generated biologically. So this is biologically based petroleum.
Again, carbon neutral because the plant sugars were grown last summer here in Minnesota.
It simply will put out an equivalent amount of carbon that was taken in last summer.
And so the whole problem with fossil fuels is they took in the carbon a long time ago.
That's right. And that carbon has been sequestered. It's been buried under the ground in an oil field or in a coal mine. And it was taken out from under the ground, combusted, and that carbon is now released.
And that's the problem.
That's the greenhouse gas. That's the cause of the global warming.
But wait a minute. It's all well and good to slow the process from now on. But what about all the CO2 that's been released in the past 200 years or so? Some scientists think we've already passed the point of no return with regard to carbon in the air.
I think that no matter what we do, we can't stop it from doubling. If we do very little, we will at least triple it by the end of the century.
Which suggests a major meltdown. So what to do?
This is open here so the air can come in.
Broker's colleague, Columbia physicist Klaus Lochner, is working on one of many solutions. A way to actually remove carbon dioxide from the air. It all started with his daughter Claire's 8th grade science project.
We went to the pet store and we bought a little fish pump. And then we added sodium hydroxide to the water and just ran this thing overnight with the fish pump running through the test tube and then looked back to see in the morning how much CO2 we collected.
They collected enough to get Claire's dad, Klaus, thinking about a real-life application. Capturing CO2 from the air on a scale that would slow global warming.
I felt this is feasible and it should technologically be possible. The other thing I realized, the amount of CO2 in the air is so large that it actually has a chance of being economically viable.
From the get-go, Lochner saw the future. 6 years later, he's got a simple working model.
The most sophisticated part is this little device over here called the gas hound, which actually measures the carbon dioxide content in the air it pulls through.
What is it in the outside world?
So it is 380 outside. We are already past that. We are now at 520, 530, and it seems to settle around this value, which is a reflection of the fact that lots of people are in here right now.
And we're breathing in
and we're breathing in it, and we are breathing out CO2.
The rest of the contraption draws air through a solution of sodium hydroxide, which removes carbon dioxide by chemically bonding with it. The little rings extend the surface area to allow maximum bonding.
So the air which comes through the fan into here has given up 2/3, 3/4 of its CO2 as it blows out here. It's now at 167, 166 parts per million.
So it took out 3/4 of the CO2.
Right. Exactly.
The idea now is to scale the model up to the size of a football goal post and suck carbon dioxide out of the air with a vengeance.
Such a device could collect the CO2 from 4,000 people, or alternatively, the CO2 from 15,000 cars.
Because greenhouse gases, once emitted, spread hither-thither all over the globe, Lochner says his carbon capture devices could be planted literally anywhere. He claims 250,000 of these things worldwide, admittedly a huge number, could neutralize all the carbon dioxide currently being emitted. 500,000 could get carbon dioxide back down to pre-industrial levels in a matter of decades, he says. And as the technology develops, the cost figures to go down.
With off-the-shelf items we have right now, I can drive the cost of CO2 capture from air below $100 per ton of CO2. And I feel that if you pursue this longer, the ultimate end game will be below $30 per ton of CO2.
That would be about 25 cents extra for a gallon of gas, says Lochner. But plenty of questions remain. How to cheaply get the CO2 out of the sodium that soaked it up, what to do with the CO2 once you've isolated it, and if you're going to sop up carbon, mightn't it be better to do so where it gets burned, at power plants, when the air is thick with carbon? But whether it's Lochner's vision or someone else's, the key idea is the same. Remove carbon from the air and sequester it back in the ground. And why not? We've pumped carbon fuels out of the earth all this time, so there's plenty of room down there for stuffing it back in.
We have to really go at it and have a lot of competition, so people who learn how to do it the cheapest and environmentally the safest win out.
That might be Klaus Lochner. Then again, it might not be. How many other labs like yours are there in the world, let's say, where someone is doing something that could have a substantial impact on global warming?
Probably thousands by now. Without competition, you get some second-best solution, and there's no need to make it any better. With competition, it really will get there.
In the end, then, economics, which has created global warming, could conceivably save us from it. A comforting thought, anyway, when the next glacier melts down right before our eyes.
For more information on global warming and to view past installments in Paul's series, visit our website at pbs.org. Again, the major developments of the day. Al-Qaeda's leader in Iraq, Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, was killed by a U.S. airstrike. The president of Iran announced he's ready for nuclear talks, but also said Iran wouldn't give up its nuclear rights. And the U.S. Senate rejected a Republican effort to cut taxes permanently on inherited estates. A reminder, you can download audio versions of our reports and listen to them on your computer, iPod, or other MP3 player. To do so, visit the online NewsHour at pbs.org. We'll see you online and again here tomorrow evening with Shields and Brooks, among others. I'm Margaret Warner. Thanks for being with us. Good night.
Major funding for the NewsHour with Jim Lehrer has been provided by There's a company that builds more than 1 million vehicles a year in places called Indiana and Kentucky. One that has 10 plants, from the foothills of West Virginia to the Pacific coastline. What company is this? Toyota. A company that, along with its dealers and suppliers, has helped create hundreds of thousands of U.S. jobs. A company proud to do its small part to add to the landscape of America.
The world's demand for energy will never stop, which is why a farmer is growing corn, and a farmer is growing soy, and why ADM is turning these crops into biofuels. The world's demand for energy will never stop, which is why ADM will never stop. We're only getting started. ADM, resourceful by nature.
And by Pacific Life, CIT, and the Atlantic Philanthropies, and...
This program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
67 tomorrow, day a lot like today, could be a spritz of rain. The weekend at this point still looks dry, hoping for just an all-out appearance of the sun Saturday afternoon.
Keep your fingers crossed on that one. See you, folks.
Good night.
Thank you for watching the Northwest News Leader. For news online, go to KATU.com.
The summer sale at Meyer & Frank is right now. Save 25 to 40% on all of summer's hottest fashions, like swimwear for the family. Sun Country is an incredible 50% off. Save 40% on sportswear for him. Dress shirts are on sale. Handbags are 25 to 50 off. Save 25 to 50% store-wide and use your entire purchase shopping pass to save an extra 15%. Right now at Meyer & Frank.
Put the power of K2.com in the palm of your hand. Go wireless with K2.com Mobile Edition. Get the latest weather forecast, local and national news, plus access to breaking news events wherever you go. See live ODOT cameras when you really need them, or get recipes while you shop. K2.com Mobile Edition has everything K2.com has, when you want it. Just click the Mobile Edition button on the side of our homepage and learn how to put the power of K2.com in the palm of your hand. Yaris from Toyota.
Why wait another summer for that outdoor oasis when you'll find everything you need at Fred Meyer?
Get to work on time, use Beat the Traffic.
Only on K2 News this morning.